So imagine you're a high school English teacher in the inner city public school. You walk into your classroom to begin your first period English class. There are 25 students enrolled. 15 of them arrive on time. Another 5 of them straggle in about 5 to 10 minutes late, and the other 5 just don't show up. After taking attendance, you go right into the homework assignment, of which only a fifth of the class completed. The lecture for today in your classroom is subject-verb agreement. And 5 minutes into your lecture, you soon realize that the subjects in your classroom are not in agreement with the verbiage of your class material. There are 3 students talking in the back of your classroom, and you get upset and you send them to detention. There's another student in your classroom who is sleeping. You wake him up, only to see him fall asleep again, and this time you send him to the dean's office. Now, despite both of those distractions, you find it hard to teach the classroom because there's a terrible stench because half of your classroom has bad hygiene. And among all those distractions, and as if that wasn't enough of a burden, you have the incredible task of teaching English literature to high school students who are reading at a 5th grade level. And you can't manage the fact that you have to come up with a plan to have these students reading proficiently by the end of the school year and meeting state standards. Now, most of the educators in this room will understand just how frustrating that is for a teacher who's tasked with that responsibility. And rightfully so, our teachers should be overwhelmed. But I would like to give you a healthy starting point to be able to begin to deconstruct all of this. We'll start with this basic premise. Number 1, you cannot teach kids that you do not know, love, and understand. You may not have known that the 3 students that you kicked out of your classroom for talking and laughing in the back of the room had behavioral issues because their fathers are incarcerated or not at home, leaving their single mothers who all have 2 jobs to manage their behavior and to manage their hypermasculine and hypertestosterone levels that come with puberty. You may not have known that the student that you sent to the dean's office for sleeping had to leave his home at 11 o'clock last night because his mom wasn't there, because she had ran off on the other side of the city to use her Social Security and her food stamps to buy cocaine, and she hadn't been back home since. And the bad hygiene in your classroom is a result of the students in your classroom who are living in households with 8 or 9 siblings, and they can't afford to spike up the water bill that high, or students who have no heat or hot water in their household, so they can't wash up the night before in the wintertime. Until we understand the gravity of poverty, we can't begin to understand and deconstruct how we can educate students on an academic level. Because if you genuinely understood the gravity of growing up in a single-parent household, to domestic violence, to rape, to extreme poverty, we wouldn't begin to tackle these issues through the lens of educational curricula and zero-tolerance policies. What we have done collectively, all of us, to breed a battleground of a pipeline to prison system for our youth is beyond our control, and it's something that we all have to come to terms with. But to begin to deconstruct the nature of this situation and in our systems that we've created, we have to first start from the most basic and most foundational level from our student development, and that is social-emotional trauma. What we have to do with students in this day and age is to begin to peel back the layers of students. We have to begin to break the social-emotional barriers that encapsulates poverty and social failure and economic strife that happens in our communities. Because our students are facing a lot more grave situations outside of the classroom that we may not see manifest in the classroom until it's too late. We have situations with students coming to school where they've just been abused and they're coming to learn geometry and curricula and English literature that they can't really cope and grapple with because they're still getting over the social-emotional elements that had taken place just the day prior. We have programs in place in Chicago, where I'm from, 50 major nonprofit organizations and social service institutions dedicated to providing the resources, the training, and the mentorship necessary to help students overcome that adversity, to escape that poverty, and to pursue lifelong success. But despite all our efforts, we are seeing in inner cities everywhere an onslaught of violence and disenfranchisement and discouragement and disengagement and ultimately hopelessness. there is an element missing between the resources that we see on this side and the students where they are. And that is a lack of critical engagement that comes with addressing the social emotional needs of children. Aside from breaking back the layers that come with poverty, aside from critically engaging students where they are, we have to begin to ask the right questions to meet students where they're at so that they can begin to connect the dots between what they're learning in school to what they're experiencing at home. But we have to be bold enough and brave enough to ask the right questions. Ask them, why isn't your mother at home? Why isn't your father present? How did it make you feel when your mom didn't believe you when you told her what happened? What can we do for you? What do you need from us? Why are you killing yourself? How can we get you back? How can we get you back? Opening up the conversation to allow more intimate discussion to happen and to allow students to dig into the deeper recesses of their minds and the deeper recesses of their subconscious will allow them the opportunity to explore what school is all about. We have situations in some neighborhoods where students won't open up in any environment or any setting because their trauma is that deep. And we have to be craftsmen in how we address these issues. We have to be craftsmen in how we approach students and allow them to open up. We have to create the space for them to genuinely understand that we are here, not just for their academic success, but for their emotional support. I'd like to conclude with this story. As a sophomore at Morehouse College, I had the opportunity to partner up with a teacher at Booker T. Washington High School in Atlanta, Georgia. This teacher, every day, had an interesting dynamic with his classroom. Half of the time, he would teach counseling and mentorship, or he would counsel and mentor his students. And the other half, he would dedicate to course curriculum. And he did this for the first semester of the year. And at the end of that first semester, his entire class had the worst grades in the school, just their worst. And the school administration learned about that data, and they said, this is disturbing. We have to do something about this. They called the teacher into the classroom, into a meeting, and they said, listen, we don't have the opportunity or the privilege to parent these children. These children have their own problems, but we have our own problems. We have standards to meet. I understand what kids are going through, but we don't have the luxury of meeting kids where they're at on this level. You're dedicating half of your time to addressing the needs of children when we have curricula and standards to meet. And I understand where you're coming from, but we have to balance it out. We can't do everything. We can't play Superman for these children. The teacher took it as it was, and he continued throughout the rest of the semester to do half counseling and mentorship and the other half academic curriculum. 3 weeks before the end of the school year, he was called into another meeting by the principal, and they informed him that he was being let go. They cited his academic progress and his academic strategy as non-conducive and counterproductive to the academic growth and success of his students. But 2 weeks before the school year ended, the grades came pouring in, and we realized that his students had all had a dramatic turnaround in their academic performance. Most of those kids in his classroom had hit the honor roll for the first time in their experience. And it was all because they had been able to deal with the complexities of their life experience and then focus on that lifelong learning aspect. Our takeaway from that is this: we were able to create a space of a nourishing culture that allows students to open up and be bold about the complexities of their life, of what they were dealing with, what they didn't have, what they were deprived of. And that allowed them the opportunity to reconcile with their trauma and to connect the dots. At that point, they were able to connect all the trauma and abuse and the depravity that they were missing in their life, to connect it to the importance of education in the classroom. Because when your mom is gone, when your father is gone, when your community is neglected, when you've been abused and you're not receiving that trauma and support, there is no connection between geometry and English and social studies. There is no connection between how this education can help you go further in the day-to-day life experiences that you're experiencing in your home. My biggest takeaway is this: until we are able to deal with and reconcile our students' current reality and allow them the space and the place to come to us in times of need, in times of true support, we will see that their academic success will begin to flow naturally. Thank you very much.
Thank you.